It's baritone time, and today we are looking at the all-new Eastman 52nd Street Baritone. And as I understand it, this is the first one made available to us in Europe, so we're so excited to get our hands on it here at Sax. Now, Eastman have really made the headlines over recent years with the introduction of the 52nd Street range, and particularly through Sax legend Bob Mintzer, who has been their key endorser. In its short history, the instrument has undergone a transformation where Eastman as a company have revisited many of the fundamental parts of the design of the instrument, such as sourcing a completely new brass and also revisiting the ergonomics and actually making them just a lot more comfortable for the player. And in this latest release for baritone, we're going to see all of that incorporated. And I think this could be really interesting for you baritone nuts out there who are really familiar with those classic designs brought to us by the Japanese manufacturers, for example, Yanagisawa and Yamaha, just to see something that looks so different. So with this in mind, I've actually picked out a Yamaha YBS-62 so that we can make a nice comparison for you and put this instrument properly into context. So with this in mind, let's go into a little bit more detail and describe some of the features and so forth that we see on the instrument. So as mentioned, this is an entirely newly sourced brass. And the idea of this brass is that it's thinner and harder than what it was previously. And that actually offers more core and density to the sound. So it's going to be really interesting to test it out and see if we get that effect in this baritone saxophone. But I want to just, first of all, just draw your attention to the look and the aesthetics of this instrument. It's really eye-catching with this finish. It's very rare to see a baritone sax, a modern baritone sax, with this sort of aged brass unlacquered finish. You know, we're so familiar with those Japanese designs and the Selmas and what have you, with their sort of pristine shininess. And just to have something like this, it's just a bit different, and it just attracts my attention personally. Now, don't expect a perfect finish if you're going to go for this look, because actually as you look down the bell here, you'll see a solder mark running the entirety all the way down here. And also there are sort of one or two, I noticed, sort of blips and blemishes, if you like, perhaps for want of a better phrase, just one or two little marks here. But personally, I love this stuff. I think it adds character, and I don't mind that at all. But I just want to point it out in case you guys are looking for that pristine look. Well, you're not going to get it with this finish, but that's all part of the character, as I say. And then let's just go through some of the design aspects, because there's a lot going on with the mechanism here. So, as I say, they've revamped this mechanism over and above the first iteration of these instruments. And in general, I find the whole thing very tight, very responsive. The key action is low, and as a key thing to me, it's really light, which I love. I always struggle with a brand new instrument that has a sort of heavy, springy feel on the keywork, such that I'm just fighting the instrument and just not having a good time on it. With this, everything just works in a very fluid fashion, so I love that. If we turn it around here, you'll see on the back the octave key and the low A key. I always look to these things on baritone saxophones because so often you get this big clumpy low A key that sticks out and actually just sort of, you feel like you're sort of fouling it all the time when you're not even playing the low A key, and that can be very distracting. But with this, it's discreet and it's sort of tucked out the way. And the octave key is nice and flush with just a little bit of a tilt to it. And there's a very efficient movement. It doesn't go all the way, and sometimes you have to push it really far in order to make it hit home. But with this, it's just a very minimal action. And so for me, that works very nicely indeed. Generally speaking as well, very comfortable. The spacing is good to the table keys, not too much of a stretch there, which it can be on some baritone saxophones. Feels comfortable on the right hand as well. Another key design aspect to this baritone is that the whole thing has rolled tone holes. which in theory, according to the manufacturers, there are not many that do it. It adds a certain warmth and projection to the sound. And I'm yet to be 100% convinced by this, because I think it's very rare that us as sax players, we're in a position where we can test a saxophone that has rolled tone holes, and then with an equivalent model exactly the same but without the rolled tone holes, to really see that comparison. So I'd be interested to find out if any of you guys at home have had that experience, and perhaps you can put your thoughts in the comments. But in general, it's just a really well thought out mechanism, and also there's a feeling that everything has been really well put together. There's no looseness in the keywork. It's very tight, and so that gives me comfort and reassurance as a sax player that this instrument is going to last, and we're not going to be taking it to your repair tech after a couple of years making some adjustments. So let's get on with it and see how it sounds. Okay, before we get going with all of this, if you're watching this video and you haven't subscribed, please do so, and remember to like and share the video, because it really helps the channel out when you do so. So I would really appreciate that. Now, before I describe the sound of my experience playing these two instruments, a word on this mouthpiece. This is actually new into us as well. This is the BetterSax burn-in baritone mouthpiece. I'm very excited about this mouthpiece because I've loved the tenor and alto versions so far, and the baritone version has now come along. I tried it just a few days ago, and immediately it spoke to me. It gave me this very immediate sound with a certain amount of cut and thrust, but a nice core to it. All those elements I look for in a mouthpiece. So I thought you'd be interested to know, because obviously it's a very important component of what is producing the sound that I'm about to talk about. So on to the comparison. Now, the really interesting thing for me is that over the last couple of days, when trialing out this sax and comparing it against the YBS-62, there seemed a really obvious difference between the two in terms of their tonal character. For me, I describe this as a sort of slightly darker but very obviously centered sound with a very obvious core. Then moving on to the Yamaha, it felt like the sound was much boomier with more of a spread to it, and perhaps more highs overall in the sort of frequency range. So I thought, this is just going to be nice and easy. I've got a real obvious comparison that I can deliver to you guys, and you're going to hear it very clearly when you watch this video back. But having just recorded those clips and listening back just now, I find them much closer than my experience in the room. And I think that's often the way. But by the time the sound goes through all the equipment and comes out the other side, and you're listening on headphones or whatever it is, it's often a much more sort of reduced and watered down sort of end result compared to that initial feeling in the room. But it's even more so exaggerated for the player, because my feeling as a player playing this baritone is that it feels like it has a sort of narrower bore. The way it accepts the air, it feels almost sort of effortless to me. Whereas on the Yamaha, I just have to work that little bit harder. So I suppose there's the sense that perhaps it's a slightly wider bore. It's not a stark difference, but it's just enough just to make me stop and think I might just need to sort of reevaluate how I'm going to get through these phrases and adjust for what I'm trying to do. So that was my sort of main observation. But tone-wise, I'll come back to it again. For me, it's just this dark, sort of centered sound here, and just a slightly more open and bigger, bolder sound on the Yamaha. But, I'd be interested to know what you guys think, because, again, I wasn't so convinced when listening back just now. So please make your comments known. Now, in terms of just the way it feels under the fingers, I mentioned it before, I like this light and low action on the Eastman, and it really comes into its own when I'm doing these clips for you. I felt that I wasn't sort of fighting the instrument in any way. It's a really great experience. The Yamaha is fantastic the way it's designed and built, and does feel good under the fingers. I suppose there's just a slightly chunkier feel, and the action's maybe a little higher, so it's just a slightly different playing experience. So you can hear I'm sort of concluding up now in the sense that I'm saying both baritones are brilliant, but they're just pulling apart in their characters a little bit. I hope you can tell. And for me, one of the standout features of this fantastic new baritone is the fact that its price is not the same as those very high prices that you now pay for those top level baritones, the top Yannis, the top Yamahas, and certainly the top Selmas. It's actually reasonably priced considering the quality and the experience that I'm getting from it sitting here. So I think this makes it a very interesting prospect for you baritone players out there to really consider this, especially if you're looking for something that's just a little bit different and perhaps going down that vintagey route a little bit more, certainly with its look, but I think with its sound as well. So great job, Eastman. The tenor was great, the alto was great, and I think they've got a really great instrument now in this new baritone.